Hello again, Bernd here, and today I'm going to be doing another video tutorial for Kired 25. An awesome guy who I know through the Vector Club, and this is his piece called Anger and Sorrow, and technically I'm going to be submitting this to you, so I'm going to be doing a video critique to your piece, because I guess this is directed at you, but I like to hope that other people can learn from it too. That's why I make these little videos. But anyway, so again, I noticed you had a little request for critique, so I just thought I'd see what I could do and maybe make a video and maybe that'd help. But go ahead and going into the things that I noticed. There's actually quite a few things. I think the main points are like perspective and the place you've placed your character in, so in like environment. And then the techniques you used with graphite, because there's some stuff you can do with graphite to kind of help make your piece seem more like believable or just look a little bit better and less drawn, so to speak, because that's what it looks like you're going for, is the more like realistic and actually placed in an environment, you know, and less illustrated. And then anatomy too. There are some things I noticed about your OC that are a little off. Okie doke. Let's see. So I noticed you put like your step-by-step, which is pretty cool. I don't notice too much off about the step-by-step. Other than like this, it looks like you kind of just made the line art, which looks fine. Like your line art looks pretty good, looks pretty clean. Like proportions and stuff seem pretty good. His head seems a little big to me, but that's might be preference. Let's see, go through this a little. Went through it once, but I think kind of at this point, it's like you have your character of your line art and then you start shading. I think it might have done well to maybe like sketch up the kind of the background environment he's in a little bit more first. So it's kind of like you've just drawn your character and you made him perfect, and then you have your subject that you want it to be about, which was the gravestone, which depicts your scene. And it's like you place two details, the sunset and a rock. I like how your rock looks. It looks really good, and the grass around it, like, awesome job on that, good rock. But just the one rock, it's a little oddly placed, you know. It really seems like I'm just gonna place a rock here just because I can, you know. It doesn't really fit into the environment. There's nothing really binding it there. And then as you continue, you start shading some more and putting some more grass, and then that rock seems to just you know, become more of that, just a rock. So really, so it's like this piece is kind of like Kired's OC, the gravestone, and the rock, and a sunset would be like a title for it. You know, it's not really like your OC placed in this environment that tells a story. Really, the story only comes out when you write on the gravestone. You know, but I'll get to that in a little bit. I thought that was cute though, the flower and like the little thing. Yeah, that was cute. All right. Anyway, get more to critiquing. I have to excuse my voice. I don't know if I'm sick or if it's allergies. Well, I sound all cereal. Okay, grab my pen here. Alright. Oops. So, some stuff I noticed like when I first started looking at this was, again, my first point. What do I want to talk about first, actually? Let's talk about the environment, and then we'll talk about anatomy, and then we'll talk about technique. So the first thing I mentioned was, first thing that I noticed was the environment. So like this, like how the well, I guess you could say environment and composition. So just like how the major shapes and things in your piece are placed. So this gravestone, the rock, and then the backdrop. So they're just placed really odd, and there's not a lot of calculation put in there about how to make them look good, really. So this hill here, you have this hill here, and then you have a gravestone placed on it with a rock, this, and then your OC here. So you just have these three things, and they're just kind of placed, and there's nothing implying depth to like a vanishing point. There's nothing implying that this isn't just some lump. You know, there could have been maybe some meditation to make it more of a cliff and have some kind of like vastness here, or play with some kind of horizon point or line or something. And really that's like, I think to fix that, instead of just straight up going from like the idea in your head and then putting it on the paper, which is cool, and like that's kind of a good way to go about it, is really like starting drawing. That's actually what you should just do, is you should just get the idea in your head and then put it on the paper. But when you want to make like a better piece, sometimes it's good to get the idea in your head and then think, okay, before I just throw this on the paper, let's first go and look at some resources online or something, or like some actual pictures of some actual environments, and then find and look at multiple pictures, and then find a picture that you actually really like, and then take that picture and like, okay, I'm going to kind of base my environment off of this picture, and then use your little visual library you just built of some examples, and take like a piece from here, a piece from here, and make your piece or your sketch using all those little pieces of, you know, parts of environments you liked or things like that, and then try to like copy them. So I mean, that's lots of things. You can have maybe found a picture of a cliff or someone standing on a cliff or something, you know, that has this vast little perspective, and then take that into account. Like, all right, how can I place that in my piece? So like maybe an example is, let's go project unicorn critique. Let's see. Tutorial. So like this piece. This piece started out with the artist with like just a cliff and then this scene, but the scene ended up being really flat because there's no transition of value, like from this stuff is closer so it's easier to see, so stuff and atmosphere gets in the way, making it harder to see. There's none of that depiction. There's no there's only like some clouds in the background, and there's not a lot of sky. Yours is kind of the opposite. It's way too much sky. So in this piece, as Cosmic Unicorn started going through it, come on, give me the medium. There we go. She added a whole bunch of atmospheric perspective, put atmosphere in the way, made mountains that are far away harder to see, added a lot more clouds, then added a bunch of sky to kind of give it that more vastness, like you're looking out on it. And then it really made this, really made the character like pop out from all of that and kind of be placed into this vast world. And that's kind of what your piece is lacking, is it's lacking something to really place your character into this environment. So let's see. So anyway, so yeah, so grab some images, references, something like that in the Cosmic Unicorn piece, where you see like, okay, she did this and this, and try to apply that to your piece. So right now you have this hill, and it's really like it's getting in the way of this environment, and there's nothing really saying like, okay, this is going, like, you kind of made some big rocks here and then got smaller, but it's still like when you look at it, there's nothing really there telling you that it's going back into space, you know, other than it's like, oh, I can see you were trying to make a sunset here, you know, and then there's some rocks, and this maybe looks like water, but who knows? Like it's hard to tell is the point. So there's like tricks and just little things that you can do, even in graphite and sketching, to help tell your viewer that this is a sunset or something. And the first step is try to avoid this lump of like a hill. Try something a little bit more advanced, something that is more easily discernible as, hey, this is something that a character can stand on, or it takes up space. And then don't bring it up to the top half of your canvas. Start maybe with like a horizon line, and like, okay, this is where my sunset's going to be. This is where like my objects are going to go to. And then from there build like, all right, I'm going to now have a cliff, and my stone, or stoners, what is this, gravestone, whatever, and it's going to exist right there. And then now my character is going to exist here and be somewhat be a certain size in relation to your gravestone, and then have some kind of visual cue besides just these rocks here to tell you that this is space. So put like how you had that rock, place like another rock, and then place a rock like here, and then have something telling you that it's going down, and then as your space goes have like little rocks, or even you could even try placing like a tree here, and then down here place this tree that looks similar but have it smaller. So your size in relation to this tree, it creates some kind of depth. There's lots of little techniques and tricks you can do, but point being, they're lacking in this piece overall, and you really need some kind of visual trick or technique really to say like, oh hey, this is a hill or a cliff, and he's standing on it up here, and then it gets smaller as it goes back here into the sunset. And I think that can be achieved honestly by playing with your horizon line, doing something with this space, and let's see. Also, so playing with your horizon line, doing something with the space, and then having some kind of little visual feature that we can relate to, whether it be a tree, and like a tree down here, or whether it's like you can't really do anything with this rock with how you have this perspective, because you can't really just like throw a rock here. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. For some people, it's like it's using ponies, and then they'll place a pony here, but you want this guy to be isolated, so I'm not quite sure. But I mean, that's up to you. It's up to the artist. Maybe look around and see if there's anything that I can't think of that you'd like to use. But this is in graphite, so there is some issues. Like it makes it a little bit harder when you're painting graphite. Another trick is like, since you have this shaded background and then it gets a little lighter as you go, so it's really heavily, it's really heavily shaded here. It kind of makes, or since this is so dark, it kind of makes this look a little odd because it's light underneath the grass. So this lightness kind of messes with you when you look at it. So it might do you well to darken this grass, because when you're talking about value, things that are darker appear closer, and things that are lighter appear farther. Especially with graphite. So like if something's really heavily shaded, it's going to appear closer to you, but if something it gets lighter and lighter shaded, it's going to appear farther. So like here's a good example, is like how this really lightly shaded, it helps us tell us that it's far, but this will look closer to us, like if this was a wall or something, you know, but it's not, it's sky. So if you wanted to actually like apply that to your piece, you could maybe make this hill darker, and then have the sky be overall a little bit lighter, maybe. I mean, but then you're like, then at that point though, you would be, instead of illustrating a piece with line work, you would be actually like shading a piece with value in graphite, which is pretty complex. And that's kind of what you're doing here in the background, but I don't want to make it that complex. That's like next step in drawing. First, let's just focus on illustrating. But that being said, when we're focusing on illustrating, I would actually recommend avoiding this graphite shading you've done in the background. Like, it's cool, and it's a cool effect, but it ends up looking odd in the end and just like not very put together. What's the word for that? I don't want to say it looks bad, but it doesn't look good. And I mean that in the best contents, and that you should try to avoid using just this like shading and the side of your pencil technique, and try using more illustrated techniques. I mean, this grass is illustrated, you have a cartoon character which is illustrated, and then a drawn stone. Like, this is all, it's done in line art, so it's an illustration. It's not a value piece where what the shading is, that's all value. That's more like, it's closer to painting with graphite, honestly. So how you could illustrate that in a couple ways. I mean, you could use something that could really help is like some clouds in here. So you have small clouds that are more here in your background, even smaller than that actually. Get some like super little clouds here in your sunset, and then as they progress in your sky, like have them get a bit bigger, and then super big here. So there you go. So I mean that's something you can put. That's a visual cue that helps us tell something. Clouds that progressively get smaller, because we know that clouds that are closer to us appear bigger, and then clouds that are super far away appear smaller. So you have small cloud, and then you have super big cloud. I mean, that's something you can do, and you can physically draw those. Or you can actually use technique to make those. So let's just go into the next part, the second part I wanted to talk about, which is technique, whatever. Something like that. Technique. So technique is basically just how you use your tools, so understanding your medium, understanding graphite. This rock right here, awesome technique. You have like the shaded here, you leave a little spot right there that's not shaded, and then like shaded here, a little bit more shaded, and then lightly shaded on the top. That's awesome. I like that. Clean line art on the character, you could call that technique. I'm not sure if this is technique down here. It kind of creates something that's interesting to look at, but it doesn't really tell me what it is. I'm guessing it's rocks, but there's nothing telling me, hey, this is rocks. Or like, hey, the light's going this way and hitting this part, so this part of the rock is going to be darker. It's like that wouldn't really happen unless they're like a whole bunch of round boulders. It's odd. It doesn't relate to anything I've seen in real life, making it unbelievable, so to speak. Okay. So, the first thing I noticed when looking at this piece, the technique on the grass is really lacking, for lack of a better word. There's lots of ways to draw grass and graphite, and there's lots of better ways to draw grass and graphite than just drawing the lines. When like you're an aspiring artist and you're like a new artist and you're just starting out, especially when you're just starting to draw in graphite, you kind of have, or new artists really have this concept that I have to draw everything in line. I have to physically draw the thing. If I have a blank piece of paper and it doesn't exist, I have to put the line there to make it exist. So everything starts becoming all about this line, when in actuality, and even in real life, it's not about that line. It's about what you put on the paper to make something. That's just a riddle. How do I word this? So it's not about the line or the thing that you're making, because like that's the common mindset, especially with new artists, is that this line is like the most important spot. So like you think like, oh, I'm gonna draw this line, but really it's not about that line. It's about what does the marks on your paper create when you're making something. So like the marks on your paper, when you put them down, what do they create? You can have something and you can have these lines and they can create something, or you can, God, I'm making no sense because I don't know how to word this, but the concept I'm trying to get at is there's a concept called negative space, and it's not about the lines of your object, it's about what isn't. God, that makes no sense. Alright, screw whatever the hell I was trying to say. Let's go here. So there's some tutorials here that I looked up. I just straight up Googled like maybe how to draw a grass with graphite, and some techniques it was talking about, some simple like shading, let the pencil do the work, try up and down marks because it'll be more consistent to where the marks you mark up, try to keep at the top so it'll taper towards the ends, and then mark downwards as well so they taper towards the bottom. And what that does is it creates the technique I was just trying to talk about, where it's not about the lines of the grass, it's about the lines in between the grass. It's about the little white spaces that fill up the grass to help create the illusion of blades. Like you see this huge, ridiculously advanced piece right here. It's not about all the black lines, it's about the white space in between the black lines that really makes the piece, which is like just a backwards way of saying like like it's just the backwards thinking of line. It's like I'm not going to draw something, I'm going to draw around something to make something. It's just a silly mindset, but it's something that a lot of new artists will overlook. And here it talks about it a little bit more, and some different ways to make little like shrubs and grass. And then again, like it's just this real hatched method. And then here it talks a little bit more about what I'm talking about, and that it's the little white spaces in between the grass that really make the grass. So here he started with some lines, and he put lines underneath, and then kind of filled them in, but made sure to leave those white streaks in there. He shows it right here, those white streaks in the in-between, because it's those white streaks that we'll really pick up on, and then will make your object. And here again, starts out with a triangle, makes some more triangles, and like, see, he's filling in the space around the object. He's not painting in the grass, he's painting around the grass. So it's kind of an awkward way to understand. I don't have a good intelligent way to word it because I'm not an art teacher. But really, what I think you need to work on is that you're really in the mindset of, I need to draw this grass, I need to draw this pony, I need to shade this background, when you kind of got to push that aside for now and think, if you want to get into this more like shaded style, and think, what do I have to do to make something look like something believable that you would see in, you know, the real world, something we can relate to, something that we recognize as an actual object. So I played with your grass a little to try to think of a way to make it look a little bit more believable, and just some techniques that I just like whipped up on Google. And when I was first playing with it, this was kind of what I was kind of what I tried, up and down strokes, but it still looks really illustrated because I'm still really focusing on, you know, these streaks of grass. I mean, it's a little bit more random because your grass looks really perfect. The main issue with your grass is that everything seems pre-calculated and placed and spaced, and it's all these lines that are super similar. Grass isn't similar. Grass is life. It's completely super random. So when I was drawing here, I tried to make it super random and like super lifelike, and way more way less calculated than had it originally. So it's way more sketched, way lots of different angles, different styles, grass overlapping, and that's really what I tried to do. But it still looks a little drawn, really, because it's still just those lines. So the next technique I tried was I grabbed a different brush to try to imitate a pencil, and I started sketching in quite randomly and really loosely at diagonal angles, and then letting it overlap at random intervals. So I did like little circles, sketched a little down here, then in the middle, making sure not to make it so it's like layer, 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 layer. So just like layer of grass, layer of grass, layer of grass. That's what I avoided, because you don't want it to look layered. You want it to be random and mixed in like real life and like grass. So get rid of that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let me go back to my snapshot. So I tried to really keep that mentality of randomness and just sketched, because now it's like your hand and your pencil is doing the work, and you're not relying on that drawn method. So what's really making this look like grass isn't the black marks. It's not the black marks that is the grass right now. It is these white streaks here in between the grass. Those white streaks are what we're seeing and what make us think grass. It's the white marks in between the black. It's the negative space. It's the space that is not the grass. The space that is not the grass. It's the space in between. Well, it is the space that's the grass, but it's the space that's not the lines. It's the space in between the lines that really make us think grass. Okay, let me grab the eraser here. I don't want to lose my layer. Okay. So, that's kind of what I played with here, to try to kind of make a little bit of grass. And then, I mean, personally, I kind of like how the grass I've sketched here, I just grabbed a brush in Photoshop that imitated graphite, and then just, again, sketched a diagonal angle and tried to make what I thought looked like better grass. And also I bound it to your character. I'm not quite sure what you wanted to do with your style, if you had a point with separating your character out from the background with this little erased glow effect. What that does is it really separates your character from the background, and it really doesn't bind him to anything. It kind of creates this little magical aura feeling. I don't know if that was your intention, like if he has some kind of aura or shield, but you also have it around this grave, so I think it was just that you kind of just did it for style's sake. I would honestly try to avoid that. I would try to bind things to your character, because right here what I tried to do is put grass in front of his hooves, because what that does is it binds him to the environment, it attaches him to it. There's visual cues that we see and we think, okay, that character is on that, is bound to that, is physically takes place here in this environment. And putting grass in front of a character, in front of its hooves or feet or whatever, will really make you think, okay, that character is here, it is bound to this physically. So, or here rather. Also things that do that are shadows. So like the shadow here. Oopsies. I did not want that. Hold on. How do I get rid of mini bridge? Sorry. Stop. Stop. Go away, mini bridge. You're not wanted. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway. You have the shadow here, and it helps a little bit because it says, okay, this guy exists here, but there's nothing really binding it to him. Shadows that bind things to space are like if you have a character, the shadow physically right below him, that's what binds him to that space. That's what really binds him there. So if your character doesn't have that and you have the shadow here, well then we see that and we see that there's a space here and we think, okay, he must be jumping because he's not attached to this. So grass in an environment, if we have whatever and we have grass placed in front of it, it really helps bind that character to that thing, if that makes sense. So visual cues and really help bind stuff to stuff. So having your character with that aura and that space erased from him really takes him out of the environment and doesn't bind him to it. And then just placing grass right in front of him really helps that. It helps bind him to that. Okay. I also forgot to mention, I sketched it a little bit in this snapshot, but I was playing with your environment here, with how you kind of have this placed like so. God dang it, I keep mucking stuff up. Okay, new layer. And I was basically looking at how you have this character placed and the odd things it does. Right now, how you have your character placed, he's at a very odd angle in orientation to this, and this, what I assume is dirt of this grave, mixes with this shadow and throws the visual cues off of what people see, and it throws your viewer off, because this tombstone isn't casting a shadow. So if the sun's here and you want it to be casting a shadow in this direction, you have to put the shadow here because you have your character's shadow here, but it's kind of hard to depict in relation to your character's shadow because you want them going the same angle, really. And that's what also creates an oddity, to where if your light's here and it's going like this hill is going to stop that light, because how you have your environment placed is this horizon line is below this hill, so technically none of this should be in light. The light should be hitting this hill and then stopping, and then should be casting and then hitting your character, something like this. So only this spot should be in light, and this head should be in light, and none of this should be in light. And so like that's your horizon line, kind of helps create that oddness. But ignoring that fact, let's just talk about the angle of this grave. The angle of this grave is kind of doing one of these. You can kind of see where I was playing with it earlier, but it's going in this direction. But your character is lined up like this, especially with this shadow, where it's going in this direction. Well, not really that direction, but you know what I mean. It's going in a different direction than the gravestone. So if this is the line that your gravestone's setting, this is the line that your character's setting, and they cross. So it's making some odd things, or it's adding some odd effects in what we see, in that your shadow is going this way and your character's going this way, but these lines of the grave are going this way, and they're crossing and then making it look not believable. Is the word I like to use. Not visually similar to things we see in life, so we don't see it as it looks good. We see it as it looks bad, because it doesn't relate to anything we can actually see, if that makes sense. So like, let's look at your hill from the top-down view. That's what I was trying to do up here. Was I was like, you have this hill and you have this character, and then you have this gravestone here, and then it's placed at this angle, and then you have your character, which is placed at this angle, and then they cross here in front of your character. So the lighting should all be at the same angle, so you need some kind of shadow. And in laying out environments for your piece and trying to think about how shadows work and how things work in your environment, if you have them laid out, think about how they look from the top view. So like here I'm looking top down. Think about how they look from the top down. So that way when you have your light source and you know where your light source... Oops, I did it again. Move my piece. Let me rephrase that because I lied to myself. So try a technique you can use, or a technique you can use is lay your stuff down, or draw your stuff from the top down view and look at it from the top down, and then when you know your light source is from, which it's from this angle, then you can think about, okay, now I know what directions my shadow should go. Let's just, for the sake of my sketch, say the light source is here and it's projecting this way, so you know that it's gonna cause shadows here and it's gonna cause shadows here in that direction. And then you can think about how your shadows will overlap in relation to other things. So that really helps you lay out lighting. And when you have a complicated scene like this and you lay it out from the top view, you can easily look at and think like, okay, how are things supposed to be laid out and how are they supposed to look? And if you have a light source and place it here, don't confuse yourself and try to like draw horizon lines like this for your shadows, because your shadows aren't going to be going at different angles. One shadow isn't going to go this way and one shadow isn't going to go this way. They're going to be the same and they're going to be parallel, because this light source that you have in this piece at least is really, really far away, like super far. Like it's really like in the distance, so it's so far away that it's not going to create those horizon lines. It's going to be parallel by the time it hits your stuff or hits your environment. Okay. So, yeah, so the angle really, or the angle you have your shapes placed, or not your shapes, but your things placed in your environment really seemed odd and create some odd things. Also, let's talk about your character. Your character has some real odd anatomy. Despite things being placed like this, what I tried to look at in my other snapshot was, again, I looked at your character in the top-down view, and you have this gravestone placed here that he's looking at, so he's physically looking at his gravestone, or that gravestone, but his head is faced looking at the gravestone, and his body is at this angle. So if this is the angle his body's at, his body's like this. So his head in relation to his body is like straight up almost backwards. And I'm pretty sure that your OC isn't an owl and doesn't have like superhuman neck strength, and it can't look like, it can't swivel its head in like 360 degrees. So there's no way in physical, even a pony reality, that your pony here should be able to have this neck at his angle unless his neck is like straight up just broken and twisted. So like when I was looking at your character, I was like, it looked really, really odd to me, because I was like, he's looking this way, but his butt is facing this way, so his head and his back are facing the same way, and I just got this like really weird picture of straight up like some kind of crazy owl character, like those scenes in the horror movies when like the person's head like straight up like turns 180 degrees and looks at you and you hear that snapping sound in the spine. Like that was the visual I got, which isn't the visual you really want to give. So okay, I had to get rid of that last part, redo that. I was trying to describe how this spine gives an odd feel and how the chest is looking forward and stuff, and I kind of just wasn't making any sense. But anyway, what I was trying to say is I talked about how his chest is facing forward and how his head's facing backwards, and how his spine here just really isn't connecting and doesn't give a sense that, you know, he's physically turning. it really looks like he's facing this way and his head's facing that way. They're facing two opposite directions. Like, how is it doing that? So what you have to work out here, figure out some way to draw or depict, is how to make it seem like he's physically turning, his body's twisting. Because like when you have to look like 180 degrees, especially with a pony, like you're not just turning your head like an owl, you're going to be twisting your body like to look, like even think about just you as a person. Like if you try to look behind you right now, you're going to have to turn your shoulders at least 45 degrees minimum. So ponies are the same way, they're no exception. So if like his arms are right here and they're on this pivot and like this is his rib cage, right now it's kind of facing this way, where this is forward and then this is backwards, so it gets farther away. If he has to look back over his shoulder to what is presumed to be his right hand side, he's gonna have to turn this way. So if he needs to turn that way, his shoulders right here, instead of being close and far, they need to physically turn with him, and then this shoulder, the shoulder that's close, is going to be his left shoulder, is now going to be on the right, and then his right shoulder is now going to be the shoulder that's farther away, which is going to twist his body and twist his spine, if that makes sense. So what you have to draw here is you have to change the way how his legs look and how we see the front of him, and then more importantly, you have to change how the spine looks. So right now, the only thing that really tells us where and what a pony spine's doing is the hairline. It's their mane. Right now, your mane's doing one of these. It's straight, which makes it look odd because it makes his head look like it's straight looking this way and not in relation to his body. So to fix that, you can draw his mane going at an angle with his back. So you can draw it like that. So then, so his hair would be cut off, and then your hairstyle kind of does one of these, and then kind of goes up, and then it would wrap around his neck like so. Maybe that would come down, like fall on his body, and then come up, and then do one of these with his ear. So instead of just having his mane straight up and down, you're curving it along with his body, if that makes sense. And that would be a way to kind of fix that and battle that odd feel. Let me just clean up his hair there a little bit. So there we go. And then his back again would be sloping and turning, and then you would need to turn and rotate his shoulders here. So like this would be his front leg, like this, doing one of these. And then his back leg would be placed over here close to his right hand leg. Yeah, his right leg is going to be placed kind of behind him or at an angle, you know, and then get cut off by his body, because we're not going to see that top part. There we go. Something kind of like that. And this is his haunch. Leg, and then his butt's like this. There we go. Also, I don't know how long your tail is, but you're missing your tail. Where's your tail, buddy? I don't know if you have like a short tail. I don't have your OC memorized. I could probably just flip to DeviantArt, but I don't know if your tail's supposed to be down here. You might want to draw that poking out the bottom, you know. Anyway, I'll just leave that in my little sketch. Tail. Okay. That is the worst tail I've ever seen. He looks like a fox. Oh. Maybe that's why your thing is raised, because your tail's there. But, But I mean, even if it's raised because of your tail, you need to show us something that's why it's raised, is because of your tail. Honestly, I would just keep the cloth like this and then have it go down like so. And then have your tail poking out like so. You know? Your tail's in here. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, so I mean, that's how I would fix your character. I mean, that's how I would make him look like he's physically turning. And then this would be his neck right here. Instead of being like instead of being his chest, this is going to be him twisting. It's going to physically, this arm is going to go all the way up here, and his head's going to twist, and this is the side of his neck, and then his ear will come up here, like that. Okay, so kind of see that sketch a little bit better, where we have the back leg over here, and his front leg is going to be, or his back leg is going to be down here, back leg. Okay, see how I've made him twist this direction, made him physically twist. So that's what you want if you want to make him looking this way, because like no pony can face this way and look this way. That's just that doesn't work. If they want to look behind them, their body has to twist with them. So anyway, get rid of that, bring that back, make a new layer. Okay, and then again, if he's facing the other way, his cape would be turned too. You wouldn't be able to see this, which would be sad because it's a cool feature. But you could maybe have it be like a shoulder thing, instead of like, it's kind of cool being that face thing. So maybe you just want to change or think more about the placement of that, or like that little pendant. Like I really like the pendant. And if he's facing atomically correct, you wouldn't be able to see that because the front of his body is now facing that way. It would be away from us because this would be the back of his shoulder that we'd be seeing. I mean, maybe you could embroider it into his cape and you can draw the symbol there. Let's see. Or maybe just change the proportion, or like the way your character's facing. Like it looks like he has his back turned to this, like, you know, like he's walking forward and moving away from it, you know, and like leaving this behind because like you have to, because, you know, it's lost, you have to move on, but it's not forgotten, so he's looking over, like that's kind of the concept you wanted. So I mean, you're getting more of a believable character and like how your character is supposed to look when you draw, you know, your spine turning like this, but you'll be losing this pendant unless you want to like maybe embroider it in there or try to do something creative with how it's on your character. So like put it like this, like your cape more like this, and then have it the pendant here, and then have it wrap around like that or something. I don't know. There's a couple things you could do, but I mean that's part of playing with it and figuring it out. Okay, let's see. When you have words, just a little tip. A lot of people, they'll straight up just write it, you know. They'll just write the thing. You have to take into account that when you're doing this and you're drawing, you're not writing those words, you're drawing those words. So you have to draw the letters, you can't write them. They're pretty neat and they're pretty clean, but they're still written. Try to make it look like as if it was etched, you know, make like multiple lines. Maybe even like I mean, this should technically be shaded, and then try to like draw the letters in or something with like an eraser. But that's just what's one of the perils of text on paper, is that as soon as you write the words, they look written. They don't look as if they're a physical piece of this tombstone. That's not really the biggest issue ever. It's just a really small one. It's just something to keep in mind. I also like this flower. It's very cute. But again, instead of you have the flower drawn, I wouldn't draw the flower. I would let me get my graphite pencil here. Is this it? No, that's not it. Is this it? Nope. This it? No. Just a sec, I'll find it. No, that's not it. Almost there. Nope. Nope. I'll find it. Give me un momento. I have so many brushes. Sorry. This is probably kind of annoying. What happened to it? I lost it. I had it. I was drawing with it. And then it just up and disappeared. Oh, criminy. Whatever, we'll use this brush. Okay. So, if this is a constant shade, that took way too long, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to my graphite brush. This is a shade, and then let's shade this in. Oops. Make it a little bigger. Because it's made of stone, so it's not going to be the same color as the paper. Because when you're drawing in graphite, you have to think, okay, the paper that I'm drawing on is the lightest value that I have. It is pure white. I need to do something that makes it so, or you have to draw in a way that your paper is the purest whites. That's normal graphite drawing, and you have to take that into consideration. So things that are light or have some kind of greater value, you have to, how do I word this? Things that are things that aren't the brightest brights in your piece. So things like this flower or things like this cape, you have to leave some of the paper visible to make it brighter than the things around it, like the tombstone or like the rock. So this flower here, this dirt, right? Oops. This dirt right here and this tombstone are going to be darker than this flower. So how do you make the flower brighter? Well, you can't draw it brighter because you don't have white chalk, which I'll talk about later. So you have to physically not draw in this flower. You have to draw the negative space around the flower, and you have to leave that flower brighter than the stuff around it. So what you have to do is you have to physically not draw that flower. So I'm going to grab my eraser tool here, and I'm going to just do one of these. I'm going to erase out this flower. So now that I've gotten this flower here, you'll notice that the flower doesn't have a color. Let's assume that it's white, the white paper. So it's the shading around it that's what's really making the flower. So then when I grab my pencil and I go in here and I start drawing the flower, I can darken it up a little. Oops, come on. Why is that not working? Oh, because I'm on my eraser. Doy. Okay. So then I can go in and darken up the stem a little bit, darken up the ground, add some detail to the flower, some like details to the leaves. Like that. How does the pendant look again? It has 3. So 1, 2, 3 or something like that. But anyway, and draw back in what the flower is. You get the point. So, point being that to really make, or what I'd recommend to really make to really make your flower stand out from everything else and stand out from the ground and stand out from everything you've illustrated is make it physically lighter than everything else. I mean, right now it's really dark, so like maybe grab like a white pencil and like kind of pop it out of there, you know? That looks a lot better than whatever the heck I was doing. There we go. Pop it out of that background. There we go. Whatever, you get the point. Okay, I think that was about it. Oh yeah, I mentioned this rock was just really out of place. To make it not seem so out of place, make more rocks. Don't make just one, make a few more. Make a rock like over here that's physically leaving the canvas. That suggests that there's things that exist where we can't see. You know, there's rocks here that we can't see that are being placed, you know, or that exist that are off the scene. You know, like a rock here that you can't see. and it suggests that there's more things this way, you know, that he's like traveling, and it kind of gives us the sense that this is more big, it's more vast. Yep, and then I don't know if I mentioned, but this I think I mentioned this angle's odd, not just in the fact that it messes with lighting and shadows, it also gives us the odd feeling that he's facing this way and it's facing that way. Just consider a little bit about how it's placed in your world. Consider maybe revising it, or maybe not revising, but take it into account in the future. I think that's about everything I can say, honestly. I think I've mentioned everything. So yeah, man. So ending final notes to end everything. So first thing, that first note I want to end on is stay consistent with your medium. So consistent medium. So have it be illustrated and drawn like your character, and if you're gonna go for the shading style, try to avoid that until you take the next jump into making a more value graphite sketch where you're drawing in grayscale completely rather than actually illustrating things like the character and illustrating things like the subject. So stick to illustrating things, like draw in and sketch your clouds with, you know, your sketching medium and stuff like that. So big cloud, like smaller cloud, and use that and use like clouds and drawing things rather than shading, doing this like shade thing over the whole thing of your paper. 2 would be work on your technique. Work on your technique with like shading, grass. Like you're shading on your character. I like the shading. It looks good, or at least in this picture. It looks okay. It could be a little bit stronger. I mean, this could be a little bit darker. But I mean, I think you were trying to avoid it because of that. But I mean, you could have a little bit stronger sense of shading because I mean, it is a sunset, it is dusk. Things are going to be darker. But grass mainly. So like techniques on features in your environment. I should honestly just write get rid of that and put environment. So stuff like the grass. Your rock's really good. I like your rock. But grass mainly, and like this dirt and how things are placed. So the technique in placement. So environment / placement. And then 3, pony anatomy. Whatever. Oops. Anatomy. So that's like how taking consideration that he has this spine and he's bending and he has to look this way and his body's facing this way. Thinking about those things, looking at those things, finding references, stuff like that. And again, when you're working on like this technique and you're working on your environment, try to find images and pictures of those and inspiration and references. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, I think that was about it. So yeah, hopefully this helped you, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know. My DeviantArt, you know my DeviantArt, but if anyone who's watching this doesn't, it's Bernd01 .deviantart.com. It'll link will be in the description. So thanks. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Well.